Welcome to Classic Storytime Hub. Tonight, we bring you a reimagined tale of suspense and terror, The Horror of the Heights by Sir Arthur Conan Doyle. This is not a simple reading, it's a freshly rewritten adaptation, crafted to avoid repetition and breathe new life into the chilling mystery of Joyce-Armstrong's final flight. Prepare yourself. The sky is not as empty as you think.
At first, some dismissed the so-called Joyce-Armstrong fragment as nothing more than a cruel hoax, an invention born of a twisted imagination. Yet the evidence has silenced the skeptics. Even the darkest trickster would shrink from weaving fantasy into the undeniable tragedies that shadow this tale. The words within the fragment are astonishing, even monstrous, but they press upon us with a dreadful weight of truth. Our world, it seems, is shielded only by the thinnest veil from a danger both unexpected and terrifying. What follows is drawn from Armstrong's own scattered notes, recovered in fragments, yet compelling enough to demand attention. And if anyone doubts his testimony, let them remember Lieutenant Myrtle and Mr. Hay Connor, whose deaths remain beyond dispute. The fragment itself was discovered in Lower Haycock, a lonely field on the Kent-Sussex border. On September 15th, a farmhand named James Flynn noticed a briar pipe lying by the hedgerow. A few steps further, he found shattered binoculars. Then, half hidden among nettles, a canvas-backed notebook, its loose pages fluttering like dying birds in the wind. Some leaves were lost forever, including the opening, leaving a haunting gap in the record. The notebook passed from Flynn to his master, then to Dr. J. H. Atherton of Hartfield, who recognized its significance. Soon after, the Aero Club in London received the manuscript, where it rests to this day, an artifact of mystery, tragedy, and perhaps revelation.
The manuscript is incomplete, its opening pages lost, its ending torn away. Yet what remains is coherent enough to chill the blood. From other sources, we know that Joyce-Armstrong was no ordinary pilot. He was regarded as one of England's most daring and brilliant airmen, a man whose intellect matched his courage. His inventions, including the gyroscopic device that still bears his name, testify to his genius. The bulk of his notes are written in careful ink, but the final lines, scrawled in pencil, are jagged, frantic, as though scratched down in the cockpit of a plane hurtling through the sky. The pages are stained, and experts have confirmed what the eye already suspects: blood. Human blood. Science, ever relentless, uncovered traces of malaria within those stains, a reminder of Armstrong's recurring fevers. But beyond the laboratory findings lies the man himself. Friends described him as both poet and dreamer, yet also mechanic and inventor. Wealthy, eccentric, and consumed by flight, he kept 4 private aircraft in his hangars near Devizes and had ascended to the skies more than 170 times in a single year. He was solitary, prone to dark moods, and his odd habits unsettled even fellow aviators. Captain Dangerfield recalled Armstrong's unnerving tendency to carry a shotgun aboard his plane, and his obsession with the fate of Lieutenant Myrtle. Myrtle had fallen from 30,000 feet while chasing the height record, his body intact, but his head obliterated. At gatherings of airmen, Armstrong would smile strangely and ask the same question again and again. And where, pray, is Myrtle's head? At the flying school mess on Salisbury Plain, Armstrong once sparked a debate. What danger would haunt aviators most in the years to come? His companions spoke of air pockets, faulty construction, and reckless banking. Armstrong only shrugged, withholding his own view, yet leaving the impression that his thoughts were darker, stranger than theirs. After his disappearance, it became clear he had prepared his affairs with meticulous care, as though he foresaw disaster. And so, from the blood-stained notebook, the narrative begins. When I dined at Reims with Coselli and Gustav Raymond, I discovered neither man suspected any peril lurking in the higher atmosphere. I hinted at my own suspicions, but they were too vain, too shallow to grasp the meaning. Neither had flown beyond 20,000 feet. Above that threshold, I believe, lies the true danger zone. For 20 years men have flown, yet only now does this peril reveal itself. In the days of weaker engines, flights were short, modest, but with machines of 300 horsepower, the upper layers have become accessible. What once was extraordinary, Garros reaching 19,000 feet or crossing the Alps, is now routine. Pilots climb to 30,000 feet with little more than cold and breathlessness. But what does this prove? A traveler might visit Earth 1,000 times and never meet a tiger. Yet tigers exist, and in the jungle they devour. So it is with the skies. There are jungles in the upper air, and creatures far worse than tigers dwell within them. In time, I believe, these aerial jungles will be mapped. Even now I could name 2. One above Pau, Biarritz in France, another directly above my home in Wiltshire. Perhaps a third hangs over Homburg and Wiesbaden.
It was the vanishing of airmen that first set my mind ablaze with suspicion. People muttered that they had fallen into the sea, but that explanation never satisfied me. Take Verrières in France. His machine was found near Bayonne, yet his body was never recovered. Or Baxter. His engine and twisted metal were discovered in a Leicestershire wood, but he himself was gone. Dr. Middleton swore he saw Baxter's plane, impossibly high, jerk upward in violent leaps before the clouds swallowed it whole. That was the last anyone ever saw of him. And then came Hay Connor. The newspapers filled their columns with chatter about the mystery of the air. He landed in a steep dive, never left his cockpit, and died strapped to his seat. The doctors called it heart disease. Nonsense. Venables, who was with him at the end, said Connor trembled like a man who had stared into something unspeakable. His last word was barely audible. Monstrous. They dismissed it. I did not. Monsters. That was what he meant. And Myrtle. Ah, Myrtle. Do you truly believe a fall could drive a man's head clean into his body? Perhaps, but I never accepted it. His clothes were smeared with some foul, greasy slime. Strange that no one thought more of it. I did. I had been thinking for a long time. I've made 3 ascents already, my shotgun always at my side, though never high enough. But tomorrow, with my new Paul Verona machine and its 175 Rober engine, I'll break the 30,000-foot barrier. I'll chase the record, and perhaps something else. Yes, it's dangerous, but if a man fears danger, he should stay on the ground in slippers and a dressing gown. I will climb into the air jungle tomorrow. If there is something up there, I shall find it. If I return, I'll be a celebrity. If I do not, then let this notebook explain what I sought and how I died seeking it. Spare me the talk of accidents or mysteries. The truth is far darker.
I chose the Paul Verona monoplane for the task. A monoplane, when it comes to serious work, is unmatched. Beaumont proved that long ago. It cuts through damp air without complaint, and tonight the sky promised nothing but cloud. She was a beautiful craft, responsive, alive beneath my hands like a spirited horse. Her heart was a 10-cylinder Robor engine, roaring up to 175 horsepower. Fitted with every modern refinement, enclosed fuselage, curved skids, gyroscopic stabilizers, and variable planes that shifted like Venetian blinds. I armed myself with a shotgun and a dozen cartridges of buckshot. Perkins, my mechanic, blanched when I ordered them loaded. He knew something was afoot. I dressed for the summit of the Himalayas, layers of jerseys, padded boots, storm cap, talc goggles. Outside the hangars, the heat was stifling, but I was preparing for the frozen edge of the sky. Perkins begged to join me, but a monoplane is a solitary machine. To wring every last foot of altitude from her, one man alone must fly. An oxygen bag hung at my side. Without it, the upper air would freeze or suffocate me, or both. I checked the planes, the rudder bar, the elevating lever. All was in order. Then I switched on the engine. She purred, eager. Released, she lifted almost at once, circling the field in wide arcs to warm her wings. I waved to Perkins and the others, then flattened the planes and opened her full. She skimmed downwind like a swallow, swift and effortless, before I tilted her nose upward. Slowly, deliberately, she spiraled toward the waiting cloud bank. In climbing, patience is survival. You must let the body adjust to the crushing pressure as you rise.
It was an oddly heavy September day, the kind that presses down with the promise of rain. The air was restless. Sudden gusts from the southwest buffeted me, one so violent it spun the machine half around before I could correct her. By the time the altimeter touched 3,000, the clouds broke open. Rain hammered the wings, stung my face, and blurred my goggles until I could barely see. I throttled down, forcing the monoplane to crawl against the storm. Higher still, the rain hardened into hail, driving me to turn aside. For a moment, one cylinder faltered, coughing like a sick heart, but the engine soon found its voice again, 10 pistons singing together in a deep, steady chorus. Below, Salisbury Plain stretched in shadow, blurred by sheets of rain. Tiny specks of other aircraft circled at 1,000 feet, black swallows against the green earth. I wondered if they looked up, puzzled at my climb into cloudland. Then the curtain fell. A wall of gray vapor swallowed me, clammy and suffocating, as though I had flown into a London fog. I tilted her nose too sharply, the alarm bell shrieked, and for a terrifying instant the plane slid backwards, wings sodden and heavy. But at last I broke through into lighter mist, and then into a second layer, opal white, fleecy, stretching like a ceiling above, while the storm below churned into a dark floor. Between them, I spiraled upward, utterly alone. Loneliness in the cloud spaces is a dreadful thing. Once, a flock of small water birds darted past, wings whirring, voices sharp and musical. Their cry was strangely comforting, a reminder that even here, in this desolate sky, life still moved. We humans have become birds ourselves, yet how little we know of our winged brethren.
Beneath me, the cloud plain twisted and heaved, a restless ocean of vapor. Once, a vast whirlpool opened in its surface, and through that funnel I glimpsed the distant earth, a white biplane gliding far below, perhaps the morning mail between Bristol and London. Then the drift closed again, and the silence of the heights returned, absolute and unbroken. By 10 o'clock, I had reached the lower edge of the upper cloud stratum. It was a veil of delicate vapor, streaming swiftly from the west. The wind had grown sharper, 28 miles an hour by my gauge, and the cold bit hard, though I was only at 9,000 feet. Still, the engine sang steadily, carrying me upward. The cloud was thicker than I had imagined, but at last it thinned into a golden haze, and suddenly I burst free. Above me stretched a flawless sky of blue and gold. Below, a shining silver plane, endless and glimmering. The barograph read 12,800. I climbed higher, ears tuned to the deep purr of the motor, eyes fixed on the dials and levers that demanded constant vigilance. With so much to occupy the mind, there was no room for fear. At 15,000 feet, the compass betrayed me, pointing east and south at once. Only the sun and the wind gave me true bearings. I had hoped for stillness in these lofty realms, but the gale grew fiercer with every 1,000 feet. The machine shuddered, rivets straining as she fought the wind's teeth. When I banked, she was swept downwind like a scrap of paper, faster perhaps than any mortal had ever moved. Yet always I turned back, forcing her nose into the gale. For I was not chasing a record alone. By my reckoning, the air jungle lay above Wiltshire, and if I struck the wrong layers elsewhere, all my labor would be wasted.
By midday, I had climbed to 19,000 feet, and the wind was savage. The stays of my wings quivered under the strain, and I half expected them to snap at any moment. I unhooked the parachute and clipped it to my belt, ready for the worst. Every strut and cord thrummed like the strings of a harp, yet the machine held firm, beaten, buffeted, but still the mistress of the sky. As I rose, I could not help but marvel at the audacity of man, to defy the limits of creation itself, to conquer the air with such courage. What greater testament to our race could there be? The silver cloudland below had flattened into a shining plain when disaster struck. Without warning, I was seized by a monstrous whirlwind, a vast tourbillon unlike any I had ever known. The machine spun violently, senses reeling, until I plunged, left wing first, into the hollow of the vortex. I dropped like a stone, 1,000 feet in seconds, clinging to my seat only by the belt at my waist. Breathless, half-conscious, I hung over the fuselage, certain the end had come. But desperation breeds strength. With one supreme effort, I wrenched the plane's level, forcing her nose away from the wind. In an instant, we shot free of the eddies, skimming down the sky. Shaken, but alive. I circled wide to avoid the danger spot, then resumed the climb. By 1 o'clock, I had reached 21,000 feet. The gale was behind me now, the air calmer with every 100 feet. Yet the cold was brutal, and nausea gnawed at me as the thin atmosphere stole my breath. At last I opened the valve of my oxygen bag. The gas surged through me like fire in the veins, lifting my spirits to giddy heights. I laughed, I shouted, drunk on exhilaration, as I soared upward into the still, frozen world above. By 1:30, I was nearly 7 miles above the earth, climbing steadily into the frozen silence. The thermometer read 0 Fahrenheit, and though the air was thin, I found I could still breathe without the oxygen bag. Yet the rarefied atmosphere betrayed me. The wings no longer held firm, and I was forced to flatten my ascent. Worse still, the engine faltered, coughing with misfires, 2 cylinders refusing to answer. A shadow of failure pressed heavily on me. Then came the shock. Something streaked past in a trail of smoke, bursting with a hiss that filled the sky with steam. For a moment I was bewildered, until memory returned. Meteor stones. The earth is ceaselessly bombarded, most of them vaporized before they strike. But here, at the edge of the atmosphere, they are a real and deadly hazard. 2 more tore past as I neared 40,000 feet, each a reminder that the heavens are not empty, but hostile. At last, the barograph needle marked 41,300. I could climb no higher. My body could endure, but the machine had reached its limit. The air was too thin to support the wings. Every tilt threatened a slip, and the controls felt sluggish, unresponsive. Perhaps, had the engine been flawless, another 1,000 feet might have been possible. But with cylinders failing, I knew this was the ceiling. So I circled there, like a hawk suspended above the world, letting the monoplane drift on her own. Through my Mannheim glass I searched the vast expanse. The heavens were clear, dazzling, infinite. No sign of the dangers I had imagined. Yet I could not shake the thought, had I already entered the zone I sought? Was the jungle of the upper air hidden here, invisible, waiting?
Circling high above the silver plain, it struck me that a hunter does not linger at the edge of a jungle. He drives through it if he wishes to find his prey. So I widened my sweep, steering southwest toward Wiltshire, where I believed the air jungle lay. The compass was useless, the earth invisible, only the sun to guide me. My fuel would last scarcely an hour, but I resolved to spend it all. A single dive could always carry me home. Then the sky changed. The crystal clarity ahead dissolved into ragged wisps, drifting like cigarette smoke. They coiled and twisted in the sunlight, clinging to the wings, leaving a greasy film across the woodwork. I tasted oil on my lips. It was not life, but something organic, diffuse, inchoate. Perhaps the remnants of life, perhaps its food. As plankton feeds the whale, might this strange haze nourish something vast, unseen? The thought had barely formed when I looked upward and beheld a vision beyond imagination. Picture a jellyfish, adrift in summer seas, but magnified to monstrous scale, its bell larger than the dome of St. Paul's. Translucent pink, veined with delicate green, so fragile it seemed a dream sketched against the deep blue sky. It pulsed in rhythm, slow and majestic. From its body trailed two immense green tendrils, swaying with solemn grace. It drifted above me in silence, a creature of impossible beauty, fragile as a soap bubble, yet vast enough to dwarf my machine. With stately dignity it passed, gliding onward into the endless heights. And I, trembling in my cockpit, knew I had crossed the threshold into the jungle of the upper air. I turned my monoplane to follow the drifting giant, and suddenly I was no longer alone. A fleet surrounded me, hundreds of them, shimmering like fragile lanterns in the sun. Some were small, others balloon-sized, their domes curved and translucent, tinted in pale pinks and greens. They glowed with an iridescence so delicate it seemed impossible that such creatures could exist within sight of Earth. A fairy armada, drifting silently across the sky. But beauty gave way to strangeness. From the haze coiled new shapes, serpents of the upper air. Long, vaporous bodies twisted and spun with dizzying speed, ghostly coils 20 or 30 feet in length. Their outlines blurred into the atmosphere, as though they were half-formed, half-dissolved. One whipped past my face, clammy and cold, leaving me shuddering. They were insubstantial, like sea foam torn from a wave, yet undeniably alive. Then the true terror descended. From above, a purplish mass drifted downward, small at first, then swelling until it spread across hundreds of square feet. Unlike the fragile jelly forms, this thing had weight, definition, menace. Its body was translucent, jelly-like, but more solid, more organized. Two vast, shadowy discs loomed on either side, eyes perhaps, and between them jutted a cruel white projection, curved like the beak of a vulture. It hovered, silent, immense, and I felt the chill certainty that I was no longer an observer in a hidden kingdom. I was prey, and the predator had found me.
The creature was a nightmare given form. Its vast body shifted ceaselessly, colors rippling from pale mauve to a furious bruised purple, so dense it blotted out the sun. 3 enormous gas-filled bulges swelled along its back, buoying the grotesque mass in the thin air. For 20 miles it shadowed me, gliding effortlessly, a predator circling its prey. Its movement was uncanny, each advance made by flinging out a glutinous streamer that hauled the rest of its writhing bulk forward. Elastic, gelatinous, never the same shape twice, it grew more loathsome with every transformation. And always those eyes, bulging, unblinking, fixed on me with a cold, merciless hatred.
I dipped the nose of the monoplane, desperate to break free. Instantly, a tentacle lashed out, snapping across the engine like a whip. It hissed against the hot metal, recoiled, and the monster convulsed as if wounded. I plunged into a steep dive, but another coil struck, draping across the fuselage. The propellers sliced it apart like smoke, yet more tendrils followed. One looped around my waist, slick and sticky, dragging me from the cockpit. I clawed at it, my fingers sinking into its glue-like flesh, tearing myself free, only to feel another coil seize my boot. The jerk wrenched me backward, nearly pitching me onto my spine. The machine bucked beneath me, the predator tightening its grip, and I knew the battle had begun. As I tumbled back, I fired both barrels of the shotgun. It was madness, like striking an elephant with a pebble, but fortune favored me. The buckshot pierced one of the great blisters swelling from the monster's back. With a thunderous crack, the gas sack burst, and the creature convulsed, twisting violently to regain its balance. Its vulture beak snapped in fury, but I was already gone, diving steeply, engine roaring, gravity hurling me downward like a meteor. Behind me, the predator shrank to a purple smear, fading into the endless blue. I was free of the jungle of the upper air. I throttled back, careful not to tear the machine apart. Then came the glorious descent, a vast spiral from 8 miles high, slipping through the silver cloud bank, plunging into the storm below, and finally breaking into the rain-lashed world of men. The Bristol Channel gleamed beneath me. With fuel still in the tank, I pressed inland, landing at last in a field near Ashcombe. By evening I touched down in my own meadow at Devizes, alive after a journey no mortal had ever taken and lived to tell. I have seen beauty beyond imagining. I have seen horror beyond belief, and neither, I swear, lies within the ken of ordinary men. Yet I cannot rest. Before I reveal my tale, I must return. Proof is needed, something tangible to silence doubt. Those radiant sky jellies drift slowly. A swift monoplane could intercept them. Perhaps they would dissolve in the denser air, leaving only a heap of jelly, but even that would be evidence. So, I will go again, though danger waits. The purple horrors are few. Perhaps I shall not meet one. If I do, I will dive at once, and if the worst comes, there is always the shotgun and my resolve.
One page of the manuscript is gone forever. On the next, scrawled in a trembling hand, were the final words: 43,000 feet. I shall never see Earth again. They are beneath me, 3 of them. God help me, it is a dreadful death to die. That was the end of Joyce-Armstrong's statement. Nothing more was ever heard of the man. Only fragments of his shattered monoplane were later found, scattered across the Kent-Sussex border, not far from where the notebook itself was discovered. If his theory was true, that the air jungle existed above the skies of southwest England, then it seems he fled at full speed, only to be overtaken and consumed by the horrors he had described.
Picture it, a lone monoplane plunging through the heavens, nameless terrors gliding beneath, cutting off every path to earth, closing in with merciless patience. It is an image no sane mind would wish to linger upon. Skeptics may laugh, dismissing the tale as fantasy. Yet Joyce-Armstrong is gone. His words remain. This notebook may explain what I am trying to do and how I lost my life in doing it. But no drivel about accidents or mysteries, if you please. And so the record stands, half testimony, half epitaph, of a man who soared higher than any before him and who may have glimpsed the true predators of the upper air.
And thus the story ended. If you liked this journey into the worlds of classic literature, do not forget to support us by subscribing so we can tell you more. And hey, if there's a classic tale you'd love to hear told in this suspenseful style, drop its name in the comments below. Your suggestion might be our next chilling adventure.